we'll start off with Detective Comics 574, Mike W. Barr writing with Alan Davis on the art. And it's funny because I almost read the wrong thing, because for some reason in my head I remembered Detective being last time, and it wasn't. It was Batman. But I did see the first cover. There's a cover in the first page of Batman, and what's so funny is that it was something about Robin possibly dying in that as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now with teasing the death of Jason Todd, and I'm not even sure if we're at the point yet where anyone was talking about doing it, or the fans wanted it, or the idea of a vote even.
It starts to feel like they're testing the waters though, doesn't it, to see what the reaction would be.
I guess, but I mean they're really only just.
No, I mean in terms of the monthly cliffhanger from the previous issue of Detective to this one, they've got okay, we've got a month of feedback here. Is there an outcry of no,
yeah, but
whatever happens.
They've not even done his origin yet though. They haven't even got to the point where they really explain who Jason is all that well.
Unless we missed that.
No, because I'm pretty sure the next trade we're going to go through with Batman issues, or even this trade that we're already on, I'm pretty sure that actually explains Jason Todd's origin. I'm pretty sure that's part of the story.
Oh, fair enough.
Because the front cover of Second Chances is him stealing the
tire. Yeah, you're right.
So I feel like we're still to get that. So I don't know if it's them testing the waters or more just that for some reason there was this almost creative bankruptcy where they just kept teasing the death of Robin because that's all they could think of doing.
I wonder if that's just a cheap and easy cliffhanger for the time. Robin might die.
So this is an interesting issue where it's actually more about Batman's past than it is Robin, because because we start off and it's next to Crime Alley, and it says, oh, this used to be a nice part of the neighborhood, but then things went south. 25 years ago just happens to be around the time the Waynes were shot, and Batman scares off a couple of potential robbers from the clinic, Leslie Tompkins' clinic, and he comes yelling in with Robin in his arms saying, oh, he's been hurt, help him. So, and she operates on him or whatever, and I actually really like the panel of Batman sitting in the chair in the hallway, because it's very much the traditional waiting room kind of hospital shot, but he's just in the bat suit, and I thought that was really interesting.
This is an image I've seen used quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it is gorgeous. Actually, I think there's some really great art in this issue, and some layouts in particular. The title page with him, coming in from the rain, carrying Robin, the cape in tatters but flowing in places, looks great.
Yeah, or even
the next page has a gorgeous layout.
Yeah, and even just the rain dripping down Batman's cape as he's got his back turned to Leslie, the top of the same page as the waiting panel. Yeah. A lot of good stuff. I think what hurts this issue is that how many times can we see the murder of the Waynes and some of those early beats play out without just feeling like, okay.
There are points in this issue that I really like that feel not unique to this issue, but that aren't completely overdone. Like his college years, for example, I think are pretty interesting here. You don't see a lot of that.
I would say that is relatively unique to this. That's where it kind of made a turn, because it does the basic kind of origin on him meeting Leslie, and it comes back to present day where now Jason's been operated on and he's probably going to be okay, but it's not a certainty. So he's just lying there, hooked up to the IV. What I did think was interesting though is that immediately when he's talking about why he became this and why he's let Jason become Robin, I think it's interesting. This issue came right out after Batman Year One finished, and there's some imagery in this flashback about him talking about getting the idea to become Batman that feels like it's actually based on what was in Year One.
It does in some points. There are other points that I don't know if it's just there symbolically to look like the Bat, or if it's intended to be an inspiration, the way it's presented. I was a little there's a beat when he's in the cemetery and there's an angel statue over the graves, and he's crying and kneeling down in it and yelling up at the air, and the shadow of this statue forms a big bat, and it's a gorgeous panel. Don't get me wrong. I think it's one of the best looking panels in this book. But at the same time, is that supposed to be an inspiration beat, or is it more just a hey, look at this?
Oh, no, I don't think that is. I think that's just a bit of foreshadowing, I guess. Now, I'm talking about the panel of the bat flying in the window and landing in front of him in more or less the same fashion that it does in year one. Like, that's like taken straight from that book. So I think it's interesting that there was already, and clearly because this would have been written before year one even finished, like coming out. So
yeah, it was just strong editorial, basically.
Yeah, this was them kind of trying to like link some of the elements up to make it feel. And I think it's interesting that Detective, right after year one, decides to incorporate some of it and add a little bit more to it, like you say, with the college year stuff, and sort of show some of these other elements. So
this kind of feels like, and I think given the timing of the release of this issue, I would put money on this is exactly why it existed. This is the issue that is for people who are only reading Detective Comics but aren't reading Batman. For whatever reason, they're not reading the main Batman title. And we've just completely revamped his origin. We've just spent 4 issues doing year one. This is the thing, and this is okay. Any of our readers who miss that, but still need to be aware of this is where we are in the universe right now. This is for them.
Yeah, which makes half of it feel a little bit just redundant for us, having just read year one, and for anyone who was reading Batman at the time. Which, let's face it, I'd say a good majority of people reading Detective are already reading Batman. In fact, I would say it's far more likely that almost all of Detective readers are reading Batman than the other way around. I feel like Batman's the one, because it's called Batman, that gets...
I think now, definitely. I think at the time, Detective was usually a consistently higher seller, as a rule.
I mean, I don't know that for sure. I've never looked into what the sales figures were at the time, but certainly now that's the case, where Batman, because it's the one that's called Batman, because people, for some reason, it doesn't matter which one's better, the one that's just called Batman just sells better because it says Batman.
I think at the time, Detective had the prestige, it had the higher number, it was the counterpart to Action Comics. It felt very much, no, this is the quote-unquote flagship, and Batman was the extra book. Of course, that wasn't always true in the stories that were being told, but I think that's how it was perceived in terms of how they ultimately sold.
Well, regardless, I mean, you would agree that a high percentage of people reading Detective were also reading Batman.
Probably at least 70%, if not more, specifically for those issues. You know, that's something where stores would have spoken, hey, we've got a high-profile team coming on to do this, new origin, because the retailers will have known that was what was coming when they were selling the issues, and they'd have tried to upsell to a lot of people, probably successfully.
Yeah, if I'd imagine those 4 issues of Batman significantly improved sales from the issues before, just because of what they were.
I would be shocked if they didn't.
So yeah, but we get this college stuff where he practiced, putting on disguises to be like a good student, because actual Bruce Wayne had to be a little shithead who was just a prick in the classroom.
He had to be a rich prick.
Yeah. And he practices breaking and entering skills on the campus and things like that, and he kind of softened everything by paying for a library.
Yeah, that was when some of the professors thought, that Wayne, he's not very good. Let's try and kick him out because he doesn't belong here. So he just donated some money to the board to make sure that he keeps his place.
Yeah. So he talks about Jason wanting to have something of a childhood, so he's letting it get all this out of his system. So unlike him, he's not just fixated on it his whole life. But of course, Jason wakes up and he says, "Look, you don't have to do this anymore if you don't want to." And Jason's like, "Are you kidding? We've got work to do." And it just ends in this, sunny panel, the dawn behind the building, of Batman and Robin smiling in the sky. It's a bit cheesy, it's yeah, kind of typical moment. It's all right. So, but I think it's interesting that we've been joking about killing Jason and how often that seems to be coming up. I think it's interesting that this issue, Jason's peril and near-death experience is far more about Bruce than it is about Jason. It's just about this is an excuse to examine Bruce's past and talk about some of these key details. So,
pretty much, I always like this sort of issue, not in terms of the structure of this issue, but more, Leslie prodding Bruce to kind of be better. I always like that stuff when that happens.
No, Leslie's a good character. I think she's solid in here. It's an interesting one because it is kind of this almost half redundant because of what just came before it. That said, though, the art's really good, and some of the beats that are in there actually are some of the best that Detective on its own's had since we started reviewing Detective from this era.
If you take the first 3 or 4 pages of this, and then the back half of this issue, if you just cut out the bit that's kind of redoing the year one stuff, this would easily be my favorite issue of Detective that we've had so far. It might be anyway, but it would be leaps and bounds above the other stuff if I didn't have maybe a third to a half of the issue just being like, okay, I just kind of read this in, let's be honest, in a better way.
Yeah, because the stuff reiterating the origins, essentially just the classical way of doing it with a couple of flashback pages, unlike the actual interesting nuance that comes with actually doing a proper series about that entire time. So it's kind of a weird place in that sense. It's not a bad issue though, and like you say, there's some really nice panels. I love that panel of Batman just waiting outside the hospital room. I think it's actually a really well done little moment.
Yeah, absolute massive shout out to the colouring as well. All the reds and the yellows and the oranges are absolutely gorgeous, and they really stand out as being very different to anything we've been reading in Detective, which is kind of revolved around a lot of pale colours, right? It's been a lot of like blues and greys and whites.
Yeah. As far as ratings go, I think I would give this like a nice solid 7. I can't really go higher because some of it just feels a bit too redundant, but the moments that do sing really do raise it above what it otherwise would be.
That's fair. I'm actually going to give it a 7.5, just because the art, I think, is that good. That even those redundant beats are still some of the gorgeous stuff to look at in those sections. But I mean, if those sections weren't so redundant, this would have been an 8.5 quite easily, I think.